The views and opinions expressed on this program are those of the participants and do not reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
BronxNet. Your voice, your views, your vision.
Good evening and welcome to BronxTalk, the Bronx's flagship television talk show. The phones are open tonight and we welcome your phone calls. Don't hesitate to weigh in with comments or questions by calling 718-960-7241. You can also email comments to us at bronxtalk@hotmail.com and we'll read those on the air during a future edition of our program. Well, State Senator Jose M. Serrano was scheduled to be with us tonight, but he was called to Albany at the last minute, and we expect he will join us in the near future. He promised, possibly as soon as July 26th. So tonight, then, a different show, one that was scheduled for the 26th, but we moved it up to tonight. How clever we are. Even though so many of us drive cars, maybe we don't spend enough time talking about conditions for drivers, the roads, the signs, revolutionary changes to the traffic flow on Broadway, and numerous other issues that drivers are confronted with every day. Also, what's the effect of the Gulf oil spill going to be, not only on the environment, but on the cars we drive? And also we'll talk about travel in general. So there's lots of important issues on our table tonight. We're so happy to have with us a longtime friend of Bronx Talk. Once again, welcome back. I dubbed him the Godfather of Travel, AAA New York's Manager of Media Relations, the affable Robert Sinclair Jr. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks very much for having me. A stellar introduction. Thank you.
I don't think I've ever done a longer one.
Wonderful.
We have a number of specifics to deal with this evening. Lighting on our roads and highways is going to be one of them. But aside from lighting, give me your state of the roads address here on the Bronx. Is maintenance up to par? Are projects on time? How are we doing with potholes? What's your overall evaluation right now?
No, lousy, bad. Right? No, things are particularly bad in our area in general. The Bronx in particular, and that trench that runs from the east to the west Bronx is the biggest offender. But we know that the road quality in the Bronx overall is pretty poor. It's poor for the entire state. There's an organization in Washington, D.C. called TRIP, the Road Improvement Program, and it rates our state's roads and bridges as 70% of them are in fair or poor condition. And not just the roads, the bridges too. So we're talking about functionally obsolete, meaning that the bridges are handling traffic volumes far in excess for what they were designed to, or they're structurally deficient, meaning one main load-bearing component is not up to par. And that doesn't really necessarily mean that collapse is imminent, but it's not up to par.
I guess it's not too difficult to start to figure out that, and I'm going to guess that your answer here, poor planning, lack of foresight as far as long-term maintenance and those kinds of things. Are we on the right track here?
No. The gentleman that was supposed to be in this seat tonight could probably be quizzed as to what the problem is, and the problem lies in our legislative bodies who have been taking money that was supposed to be put into the Highway Trust Fund, namely your registration fees, your license fees, the sales tax on gasoline in New York State. And New York State is one of only 8 states that has a sales tax on gasoline, and that's on top of the other taxes, the spill tax, the petroleum business tax et al. That money is supposed to be going to a dedicated fund that's supposed to take care of bridge, road, maintenance, repair, and another fund for capital construction. They are taking that money, putting it into the general budget, probably 50 to 75% of it, and believe it or not, selling throughway bonds with 30-year obligation of interest rates and using that for things such as snow removal on the throughway.
Well, let's just break that down. I mean, the priorities, and we just established that there are issues with roads. On the other hand, snow removal is important.
Sure.
And there is obviously a serious and a number of serious financial considerations in the state of New York.
Right.
How do you get priorities for roads to be moved up the ladder so that it receives the attention and the financial consideration it deserves.
Just have things in place as they were originally intended. Back in 1995, the dedicated highway fund was established. That money was supposed to be used for maintenance. Selling bonds, that sort of thing, is for capital projects, long-term projects, things that will take a long time to build but last a very long time, and then you have the 30 years worth of interest that have to be paid off. Using 30-year interest bonds to pay for something temporary like a snow removal, you'll be paying for that this winter's snow removal for 30 years with interest. So the whole financial setup as it exists, as a result of the state legislature's shenanigans, for the lack of a worse word, have left us in the position that we are in.
So for that is a very interesting thing for things like snow removal, because they're so strapped. They say, where do we have available
where do we get the money?
And there's a guaranteed pot of gold there, because that money does come in through tolls and other things.
Yeah.
The AAA I always thought was kind of in a peculiar place, because you do advocate for mass transit monies and mass transit fundings, but of course you're also the biggest champion for roads. Where are we at as far as that balance, using even tolls or other things for mass transit or funding for mass transit versus some of these improvements to roads?
Right now, when you cross an intra-city bridge or tunnel, they are maintained by Triborough Bridge and Tunnel Authority, also known as MTA Bridges and Tunnels. Probably 40 to 45% of that toll money is siphoned off and given to mass transit. When you ride the bus or subway, you're only paying probably about 60% of what it costs to provide the ride, with motorists footing the bill for the rest of it. Now,
do you have an issue with that?
Not necessarily. Look, we in the city that we're in, we believe intermodal transportation. You have to have different modes. In fact, there was a study recently in the Times that said that New York is one of the most undercarred cities in the country because we have such an excellent mass transportation alternative. Fine. But when you're taking the money from motorists to pay for things that are unrelated to motorist-related issues, it's not fair. That's when we have a problem, especially when, now the bridges and tunnels are beautiful. They're in excellently maintained condition. It's the roads that are going to and from.
So wait, although originally you had said that the bridges were also overcrowded and those kinds of things.
You have to, now when we say bridge, it's not just, massive structures like the Triborough. Exactly, we're talking about overpasses.
I see.
All right, that's a bridge. You remember a couple years ago, it was Astoria Boulevard, Steinway Street. A piece of that thing fell under the Grand Central Parkway, almost killed a guy.
Right.
That's considered a bridge.
I see.
And there are
and those
thousands.
You're saying many of those are in reasonable shape. You're not.
No, they're poor shape.
Poor shape.
Poor
okay.
shape. Yeah.
One thing that I have noticed, and by the way, anybody who has a question about your street, your neighborhood, a road you travel on, this is, as I call it, I better not say it again, the godfather of travel, but you certainly can get some input as to what the possibilities are for it, or at least an idea about it. But if you drive around, my experience is, and I'd be surprised if anybody would doubt it, is that the roads are more jammed than ever before. Sure. It used to be that, using the Major Deegan as an example, if it wasn't around a Yankee game or it wasn't 5 o'clock on a Friday, you pretty much could get, south from Fordham Road past the ramps, toward Yankee Stadium.
Right.
Nowadays, you almost can never do that.
No.
You can almost never go across from Fordham Road across Pelham Parkway, because that's always backed up.
Yeah.
There's no question there are more cars on the streets, more cars on the road than ever before. Is this because of a lack of infrastructure, or building infrastructure for the MTA, and or just simply more people are buying more cars?
Well, our population continues to increase.
And the population grows.
In the Plan NYC document that outlines various things that this administration wants to do in preparing for the future, 20 and 30 years on, it says that the population will increase by about 1 million in 20 years. All right, combine that with the fact that most of our infrastructure dates back to the Roosevelt administration.
Which Roosevelt? Good question.
Not Teddy,
Okay.
but Franklin Roosevelt.
I feel a little better about that. Okay.
But what happened was, Franklin Roosevelt was a New Yorker, and his liaison here was Robert Moses, and curse him as you may, Robert Moses got a lot of things done, benefiting from the largesse of the Roosevelt administration. So most of the roads around here were built back during the 30s and the 40s. Great, but those roads predate modern transportation engineering. So you lack things like breakdown lanes. So if one guy has a busted radiator on the Major Deegan, you're going to get backups up and down the road because there's no shoulder for him to pull off on. Same thing on the Cross Bronx, same thing on the Gowanus, same thing on the BQE. It goes on and on and on. That is the main problem.
Is there enough money out there to build a greater infrastructure? Because to widen the Cross Bronx, don't tell anybody in the borough that you'd like to do that.
No.
Or widen the Major Deegan, these would be projects that would cost billions of dollars and go forever. So are we just simply stuck and really need to improve mass transit with ferries and other things like that?
Stimulus money. The Obama administration has made billions of dollars available in stimulus money. We aren't getting it. The reason is that these projects have to be called shovel ready, and shovel ready to the New York State Legislature seems to be prepared to deflect blame in the next scandal.
Right.
You know, we need these projects. The money is there, but because the pre-planning work hasn't been done, and we're talking about environmental impact statements that might take 5 or 10 years.
You know, I want to talk about one quick. I don't want to spend a lot of time on it because we can do the whole show on it, and that is the Tappan Zee Bridge. Perfect example. It was planned for 50 years. We're now over 50 years.
Yep.
And it needs to, I mean, the fear is that one day a piece of it will come down and somebody will get hurt badly.
Built on wooden pilings in the muck and mire
And
of the bottom of the Hudson
here's something
River.
that's received attention, but yet we still haven't come to agreement on what to do.
Well, they were having planning meetings up in one of the counties, Dutchess County, I believe, a couple of weeks ago, and talking about what sort of structure are you going to have? Is it going to have rail, a combination of road and rail? Is it going to be 2 levels, 3 levels? You know, what form is it going to take?
Does the AAA have an opinion?
We need another one. We absolutely need another one.
You don't have a preference as to whether it should be combined, or the AAA hasn't come out with a...
No, well, I mean, look, the complex transportation engineering requires transportation engineers, and considering what the needs will be not only now, but 30 or 40 years in the future, we aren't able, as a small private organization, to put forth the resources needed to crunch the numbers and do that sort of work. Right. But clearly, something needs to be done. In fact, you know, the Tappan Zee Bridge is made of substandard steel because it was built during the Korean War, and they needed the metal for war material. So not only is it old, not only is it on wooden pilings, not only is it rusting away, it's made of bad stuff in the first place.
I do know, we might have shared this once many years ago, but every triangle on this is totally off the beaten track. Every triangle on that bridge is a right isosceles triangle.
That's right. Yes.
Did you know that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
It's basic load-bearing components right there, triangles.
I want to, Jane just told me she has friends in Rockland County. Without that bridge, they're all messed up.
Drive over it fast.
But within the speed limit. You did a study on lighting.
Yes.
On roads, and unfortunately, the Bronx did not show up too well. Why don't you review some of that?
Again, this was a repeat of a study that we did back in 2007. We drove around, analyzed the number of lights on some major roadways, Cross Bronx, Cross County, Hutchinson River Parkway, Henry Hudson
Major
Parkway.
Deegan, the Henry Hudson as well.
And we found that fully... it was 46% of the lights.
I got it here. I don't want to put you on the spot.
Sure.
Here. Let's see. Cross County Parkway had 46% broken.
Cross Bronx Expressway.
Cross Bronx, I think, was right at the top.
Right.
354 of 777, also 46, almost half of the lights are out.
And the Alexander Hamilton Bridge between the Bronx and Manhattan is completely dark. No lights at all are working on it.
No lights are working, or no lights were ever even...
No lights are working on it. I believe their lights are there, but they're not working.
You know, in a way, that would be almost most surprising of all, because that is one of the most traveled roadways you could imagine. As I was talking about before, it is always backed up. There are always cars on it. One would think that would be the place that gets the first attention.
Which is probably what leads to the problem. You have to shut down a lane and put a guy up on a cherry picker to change the bulb or what have you. When are you going to do it? Like you say, it's busy 24 hours a day. But something needs to be done. Because of the traffic volumes, all right, and because of the poor engineering of our roads, remember, dating back to the Roosevelt administration, the lanes are narrow. You've got elevation changes, you've got radii that create blind curves, you've got on-ramps that are too short, all sorts of problems on these roadways. because of that, you need lighting. The headlights on a vehicle are not going to be sufficient with all of these things going on for a driver to identify a problem and react to it in sufficient time.
Do you have any documentation of poor lighting causing accidents, or we just would have to assume there are problems?
Government estimates say something like between a quarter and a third of all crashes have some sort of lighting component, deficient lighting as a result. But when you have all these challenges to a driver, it's important that you have lighting, and we don't. And the Cross Bronx is one of the busiest roads in the country. It's coming from a bridge, the George Washington Bridge, that is the busiest bridge in the country, if not the world. Fully 150,000 vehicles each way cross that bridge every day. And if you're going from anywhere probably in the United States of America to Connecticut, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Maine.
That's where you go.
You're going across the Cross Bronx. You're going to George Washington Bridge, Cross Bronx Expressway, and 95 going north.
You know, just from a engineering point of view, are these lights simply electrical and they're plugged in somewhere, or are they all independent? One would like to think with a solar collector up on top, and you know, then the light becomes somewhat independent.
I'm not sure about the details. You mean if they hooked up on like a series circuit, like the
right.
subway lights
or is
used
it
to be?
simply a free? One would think you'd want to make them all solar collectors and freestanding, and probably with energy efficient light bulbs. I know
you're real spending a lot of money now. We just want to change the light bulbs. You're completely redesigning the system.
But that would, of course, be the way to do it.
That would be nice, but you know, we're realists. We realize the money just isn't there. Let's put new bulbs in.
The AAA, in its wonderful magazine Car and Travel, took a stand on the pedestrian malls that Mayor Bloomberg is creating in Manhattan. I must tell you, personally, when I heard about it, I was like, I can't imagine that creating a mall in Times Square is not going to hurt traffic or even help traffic, as they claim. Yet it appears to be moving forward. They're now going to expand the concept to Herald Square. What's the analysis by the AAA of these projects? We
don't like it, and the idea that it will not slow traffic because it's closing off a major roadway and diverting it east and west, we thought was a fallacy. And recently the city released a study that said, and indeed, since these things have been open, that traffic is slower, moving more slowly, and the volumes have increased. Yet and still, in spite of the studies being there, and we asked the city for the studies because they have the equipment, the computer models and what have you, to be able to do these things, they would not give us the information. Finally, they let it out and showed that indeed what we thought would be the case is the case. Yet and still, the mayor and his idea of making the city like Paris or Spain or some other place continues with these ideas.
Is there a way to do these things and not impact the traffic, or is it just you don't see it and the AAA doesn't see it?
No, and one of the things that they're talking about is closing 34th Street and having only buses go up and down and having pedestrian malls on there. That's going to be the most ludicrous thing in the world, because 34th, like from 32nd to 38th or 40th Street, is a major cross street between the Midtown Tunnel and the Lincoln Tunnel. Anybody going from Long Island and Queens and Brooklyn, the most efficient way to get to the rest of the United States is to use the Long Island Expressway, Midtown Tunnel, and across Manhattan through those streets.
One would think then, using Times Square as an example, then let's say 8th and 9th Avenues are busier, and certainly if you were to go east, then 5th and 6th Avenues are busier. Right. Are those the streets that you are concerned about and have shown increases in traffic? And certainly the cross streets and the 40s through the Theater District, and then of course through the Garment District below.
And, you know, some businesses have expressed some fears in that if there was a major fire in Times Square and fire trucks are coming down Broadway, and when they get to, I believe it's
like 44th or something.
Yeah, maybe 43rd or a little bit
and
higher.
They'd have to
make a right turn and go west and then come back down, and you know, the next street over is northbound, so if you're going southbound, you have to go 2 over or fight the traffic going the wrong way.
Fire engines can go on any street, but the point is if it's closed off and it's not a street any longer, then they can't get through.
Exactly. So it's creating problems in that whole area, and really things spiral from there.
Do legislative colleagues of the mayors on the city council have input? Have you been able to get attention, or are you?
No, we've tried talking to a couple council people, but if you remember congestion pricing, when the mayor was trying to get that done, the city council quickly rolled over and acquiesced to the mayor's wishes based on promises that he made to them for whatever. And it was at that time that the state legislature, imagine the state legislature showing some wisdom, and they wouldn't even bother to vote on the idea. But, we don't think that there'll be a lot of relief through the city council, to be honest, based on history.
Let's talk about the Gulf oil spill. And, everybody, and you and me, of course, included, are concerned about the effect on the environment, but on the automotive industry and on the car infrastructure. Will it have an effect that will be noticeable?
There could be a ripple effect in that legislators, population is going to say, look, this is even more reason for us to wean ourselves from fossil fuels and to do it sooner. It's talked about now, I've seen speculation in the business section of the papers that ExxonMobil is going to buy BP, that they will be...
I saw it today.
Yeah, they'll be belly up as a result of paying for all the damage that's been done, and that damage that could last for years. Now, some have thought that the loss of oil, that oil might affect supplies in some way, shape, or form. That's not the case.
That's not the case.
Not the case. There's probably 500 rigs, similar rigs in the Gulf of Mexico. The loss of one is not that big a deal. But it has drawn attention to the fact that fossil fuels are not the way to go, or at least pulling them out in this manner. The deep sea wells were thought of as a solution to perhaps a problem happening in the
Let's
shallow
jump
wells.
ahead. We did a show on alternative fuel vehicles. We talked about hydrogen vehicles, and now there's an electric truck that's moving around the Bronx, and they're trying to use that as a prototype.
Right.
What's the way to go? What do you or what does the AAA think we really need to do?
That's hydrogen and electric is really long term. I mean, 15, 20, 25 years off. There isn't the infrastructure, for example, for hydrogen, where you're going to fill the vehicles up. The vehicles just aren't there. The technology still has to be developed. Electric, again, the charging up, the charging times, how long it takes, the range, performance.
So is there a more immediate solution?
Diesel. What 75% of Europeans are buying every year is diesel. Now, we have that's fossil fuel, low sulfur diesel fuel exists, which makes it a lot cleaner, but we've all heard of biodiesel, which is as close as the grease pit at the local restaurant. But in order to burn biodiesel, you need a diesel vehicle. In fact, Herr Rudolf Diesel, back in 1888, designed diesels to run on peanut oil.
So somebody somewhere in high places, because again, AAA is using its resources to the max, needs to really study it and put some change through.
You don't have to look that hard. Just look at what the Europeans are doing. Europe really does great things as far as their cars are concerned. We're pretty dumb as far as vehicles are concerned here in the United States. The Europeans are setting the standard. We could follow them.
Let's grab Mark from Pelham Parkway. Mark, are you going to ask about Pelham Parkway? Do we have Mark?
Well, my question pretty much is going to be
be quick because we're almost done. Go ahead.
Yeah, I know. Pretty much the mayor, when he ran and he wanted congestion pricing and everything else like that, what he promised was he was going to improve bus and train service and everything, yada, yada, yada. If we would have had congestion pricing in place, it would have been a disaster.
Mark, you got to ask your question.
Well, the question is basically congestion pricing won't work. And everything else won't work because look how they've cut buses and trains. Look at the fiasco that's going on now.
The question is...
So my question is basically, do we have an alternative to hold the transit authority and the mayor liable now for all the promises he made with the road work? Because anybody who drives in New York knows the roads are a hazard.
The roads are in
plain
kind
English.
Of
Bye.
Right, I don't know how to hold them accountable except at the polls, but I'll tell you what would solve a major part of the problem, a rail freight tunnel. There's no way to get...
From where to where?
From New Jersey to Queens or Brooklyn. And that would be able to bring freight in. We have an inordinate amount of trucks on our roads.
You would do it underneath the city of New York? Sure. Underneath Manhattan?
Yeah.
Could be done. Yeah. With a couple of dollars.
A few.
I was driving. I promised Robert that I was going to do this. Okay. I was driving yesterday. I was outside the new Fairway in Pelham, New York, which is right outside the Bronx. And I was parked at a light because I would not take out my cell phone unless I was at a red light. And I saw the sign knowing Robert was coming in. And I want you to explain to me, this is a real street sign. I want somebody to explain to me, what does this mean? What do you do when you come to this sign?
That means you get
Put it back up on the screen, Robert.
Get somebody to remove the blower sign. That's probably, they probably updated the intersection and made it a left turn only and forgot to take down the old side.
Put it back up here. This is what I think. It's actually a 3-lane light. There's 3 lanes, and I think these 2 are for the left lane, and this is for the right lane.
Right.
But I guess they ran out of tree trunks, so rather than put it
on
over
the
here,
side,
so I looked at that and I said, now what am I supposed to do? Because I happened to be in the right lane and I wanted to go left, and I knew I was going to have to go back around because I didn't know.
That doesn't exactly explain that you need to be in the right lane to do it. It looks like you have to be right in the middle to make the right turn, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna make a gift of this for Robert so he can bring it to his colleagues over there.
Thank you.
Let's talk
God
about
bless.
road signs and where we're at in road signs. We've discussed this over a period of years. I know many of them were replaced. I think it's one of the areas the city and the state, I guess, have done a better job. Tell me about road signs.
Probably more work to be done.
One.
Yeah, this is an example of some of these things that happen. I think back to when the city redid the angled parking in Corona and Astoria. They changed the lines, the direction of the lines, but none of the signage to indicate that there was new or anything like that.
You've got something real quick, which we want to promote. Let's see, first senior safety.
Let's do this car seat first, since that's this
safety.
Friday.
Okay.
This Friday, Access Safety City on West 158th Street. All right, we're having a car seat safety check. Most parents that install car safety seats aren't doing it right. Car safety seat technicians, the people who are trained to install the seats, get 40 hours of training. Most parents don't even bother to read the instructions on the seat.
Keep your kids safe. The number is on your screen, 212-839, 4750.
Right.
And then also for senior driver safety. People are living longer and driving longer.
Right, and we're going to have an expo where we're showing all sorts of products and services that will help seniors stay on the road. August 5th, Adelphi University.
AAANY.com. I'm going to advertise. Become a member of the AAA. It's one of the best things I've done. It's inexpensive, and you just learn and you get, and it's worthwhile.
And we're battling for you at every stage.
Always great to have you, Robert Sinclair Jr. from the AAA. Folks, if you have further questions or comments on anything you heard on tonight's show or anything going on in the Bronx, then email them to us at BronxTalk@hotmail.com, and we'll read those on the air during a future program. Archives of our show are available at blip.tv. Just search for Bronx Talk. Next week, barring anything unforeseen as far as him being called to Albany, we're scheduled to have Assemblyman Jeffrey Dinowitz to talk about Bronx politics and other issues. Then, hopefully on the 26th, Senator Serrano will join us. Also, make a note, we'll be presenting a debate between the candidates in the race for the 76th Assembly District on August 9th. Incumbent Peter Rivera, challenger Louis Sepulveda will be with us on August 9th. Make a note of that. And we'll be inviting other candidates to debate as the political season goes on. In any case, regardless of the guests, we'll be here with somebody every Monday night for Bronx Talk at 9 o'clock on BronxNet, Cablevision Channel 67, Verizon Fios 33. Thanks to Jane Folloro, our great producer. To you, good night.